क्या आपको पता है हनुमान जी ने अपनी एक कूद से पूरा समंदर पार कर दिया था, जो कि लगभग 100 योजन यानी कि 1200 किलोमीटर था। या फिर आपको ये पता था कि लक्ष्मण जी ने 14 साल तक बिना सोए राम जी और सीता जी की रक्षा की थी, और ये निद्रा उर्मिला जी को मिल गई थी, जो कि लक्ष्मण जी की पत्नी थी। हर एपिसोड में एक नई कहानी, एक नई दुनिया। फीवर स्टोरीज के साथ अपने दिनों को बनाइए खास। फीवर स्टोरीज, हर कहानी में एक नया जुनून। सब्सक्राइब नाउ ऑन YouTube और हर रोज पाइए एक नई कहानी का डोज। फीवर स्टोरीज, कहानियां जो सुनाई नहीं दिखाई देंगी।
You're listening to a Mint podcast brought to you by HT Smartcast.
Hello guys, welcome back to another episode of the Why Not Mint Money podcast. Today, we are going to discuss an exciting topic with our guest, Chartered Accountant Sagar Soman, to discuss and navigate the challenges of an NRI who wants to come back to India and become a resident.
Welcome to Why Not Mint Money, a personal finance podcast where we help you understand basic money concepts and share strategies for you to build your wealth. So let's get started with your money journey.
Hi Sagar, welcome to Why Not Mint Money podcast, and really nice having you here. So yes, we are going to discuss a very interesting topic, you guys, and it's about NRIs moving back to India. So basically, you must have come across your relatives, your friends who dream or who are working abroad. And it's the typical Indian middle class dream, like to someday work in US and have a lavish lifestyle there. But I guess not everyone wants to stay there forever, right? After earning some amount of money, they want to return back to their roots and have a comfortable, enjoyable retirement. But what are the practical personal finance challenges? So these are the things that I have called you to discuss about. Since you deal with a lot of them, let us know your take on it. So broadly, what kind of people want to come back and how has been your experience dealing with them?
First of all, thank you, Sashind, for inviting me. It is like, for NRIs, most of my clients I've seen at the end of their career, they want to settle back in India due to the better health benefits available now in India, and plus having proximity to the relatives and all. So I see most of my clients moving back to India only at the end of their career. And that has been a general growing trend nowadays.
Can you give me one example, one interesting client that was working abroad, doing very well, but at some point they thought they want to shift back? So can you please delve a little bit on their mentality? Since you talked to them, I mean, you obviously manage their finances, plan their taxes and all, but you are a human and your client is a human. So I'm sure they must be sharing other aspects of life also, right? So could you please talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I have a particular experience to share. It's not funny at all. I mean, it's quite a serious one. One of my clients, they were earning very well, both doctors living in the UK, working for NHS, which is the National Health Services. Both were surgeons. One day, one of them got seriously ill while they were at their home. They had a beautiful villa, which was at a remote place. They had to call for an ambulance and go through the pain of going through the hospital and all. After coming back, after recovering and all, they thought that if I want to go through such pain, I want some of my relatives or somebody whom I know around me. And it was really a feeling that of loneliness there. That's what triggered them. And then suddenly they decided to liquidate everything and come back to India. There have been many other instances of other clients also whom loneliness, I would say, is the most burning issue that they have at the end of their career when they want to shift back to India.
Wow, that's a really fascinating story, and I think indeed very true also, right? After one point, you want to just connect with your family, go to your roots and just enjoy life like it is. But what are some of the challenges people, NRIs who have been staying outside for very long, what are the typical challenges they face So let's take the finances part a little bit later. But lifestyle wise, what are the challenges you have noticed them facing when they come back to India after very long?
Yeah, so first thing is basically getting used to the different culture. So that's the first thing that comes to their mind. Secondly, I've seen usually what people do is if they had a family property or if they had bought some property as an investment, usually that becomes an anchor for them. So, for example, if somebody was from Bangalore living in Ahmedabad, but they bought a property in Ahmedabad, so they at the time of retirement they usually plan to come back to Ahmedabad. But if they don't know where they really want to settle down, it's kind of a cultural shock for them, because if your roots are in Bangalore, then you would want to retire in Bangalore. So having a house property becomes an anchor, which again is a difficult thing for them to adjust. Apart from that, usually, what they like coming back to India is they get a lot of domestic help and other people working for them, which is not so cheap outside India, and which people, NRIs specifically, are not used to. They are used to working for themselves and doing everything on their own. But then here in India, you get a lot of other facilities which are difficult to get there. And apart from that, the noise, the pollution, and the usual buzz that is there in India, so that disturbs them a bit.
Interesting. I have a solution for them if they want to have a clean or very pollution free environment. They shouldn't shift to a metropolitan city. They should shift to a tier 2 or tier 3 city or something.
Absolutely, yeah.
So Sagar, now let's delve in some detail regarding the challenges of bringing back the money, sorting our personal finances, right? So I think we can show our listeners a picture. Let's say someone who started working in the US at the age of 25, and by the time he is 50 years, he wants to return back, right? So 25 years of his lifetime he has spent in a foreign country. So it's normal for them to have accumulated a lot of savings there. They would have maintained a lot of foreign stocks, foreign bank accounts, foreign pension payments. They must be having a lot of stuff. So what are the challenges of sorting those stuff out? And if one decides to come back, what steps should they take so that the transition financially happens in a smooth way?
Yeah, so in India, there are two legislations which deals with NRIs. One is a FEMA and the other one is income tax. Both have their concept of residential status. Now, as per FEMA, when you come back to India, from day one, you become a resident Indian, and your bank accounts and everything has to be changed accordingly. Whereas in income tax, it depends on how many days you stayed in India for the past year. So income tax goes on a historical concept. Plus, secondly, in income tax, there is a special status given to such returning NRIs, which is called as RNOR status, which is a resident but not ordinarily resident in India. So they enjoy this special status. If they are coming back after a long time, then they can enjoy up to 2 years. They have this status. The benefit of this is basically that your global income does not become taxable in India from day one. So you get a cooling off period of, let's say, 2 years to manage your finances. Now, regarding the checklist that you should have is, first of all, you should make a list of whatever assets you hold out.
So Sagar, before proceeding ahead with the other aspects, can you make this point a little bit simpler? So let's say an NRI returns as a ROR versus he or she returns as a RNOR.
Correct.
So who can qualify as a RNOR and who can qualify as a ROR? And could you give us an example using a real life example how this status will make a difference in your finances, at least for the initial 1 or 2 years?
So when you come back to India, if you stay for more than 182 days in the first year, then you become a resident Indian. But then after qualifying as a resident Indian, you can still get the benefit of having a RNOR status. That applies to if you have been in India for, being a non-resident for 9 out of 10 financial years. past financial years. So before this previous year, if out of 9 out of 10 previous financial years you have been an NRI, so taking the same example that somebody working outside India for 25 years, he has just been visiting India on some special occasions and all. So he can still qualify even after becoming a resident Indian, he can still enjoy that special status of a RNOR for 2 years, because for the past 9 out of 10 years he has not been a resident Indian. So he has been a non-resident basically for 9 out of 10 years. So that is one step which you can qualify. Or the other one is, if your stay in India has been cumulatively less than 729 days in the last 7 years. So even if you are a resident, you can enjoy RNOR status if you qualify either of the two conditions. One is you have been an NRI for 9 out of 10 years, or if you have stayed in 729 days or less in the last 7 years. This is before the year you have moved in.
Got it. So once we have classified who falls under ROR and who falls under RNOR, now can you delve a little bit on the difference between, what are the benefits one gets in each kind of status?
Okay. So first of all, this is a special status given in income tax only. So it doesn't matter for your bank accounts and all. As I mentioned, from day one, once you have come back to stay in India, you become a resident Indian. So for FEMA, the status will always be a resident Indian once you move back. Now, the special status of RNOR gives you the privilege that your global income doesn't become taxable from day one. Plus your FCNR fixed deposit if you may be holding, which is the foreign currency non-resident fixed deposit if you may be holding. So that doesn't become taxable. The interest that you get on that is not taxable for RNOR status. So these two benefits are there. So your global income doesn't become taxable from day one. You can still plan, you get a window of up to 2 years to plan your finances accordingly. Plus your FCNR FD, which you may be holding, that doesn't get taxable for that particular 2 years.
Got it. Okay. So RNOR has some benefit in the sense if you have that status, then your global income, your foreign income doesn't become directly taxable. Okay, so now let's move on to the more interesting aspect, which is, how does a person decide how much assets or properties that he has abroad, how much of it should he or she bring back, and, what are some of the things he or she should be, looking out for?
So first of all, having a list of your complete assets is very essential. It may be immovable property, movable property, ESOPs, shares, whatever you may be holding outside India. So having a list of that is very important. Then secondly, if you plan to keep it, like if it's a real estate, if you want to still keep it, if the rental incomes are better there, or for some other reasons, for your children and all, if you want to keep that property, then having a succession plan is also very important. So having a nominee or preparing a will in the country where you have those assets is very important. Secondly, once you have those list of assets with you, then you can make a proper plan that how is it taxed in your country versus how is it taxed in India, and what is more beneficial to you. Plus, you get this window of 2 years of RNOR status where maybe your tax is lesser in that country where you have come from. So you can keep that asset for those 2 years, earn income on that, and then move it after the 2-year window closes to India. Because once you bring that asset to India, then it becomes taxable from day one. Whatever income you earn on that and all will become taxable. So you need to plan accordingly, having a list of those assets and making a proper plan of taxation in your country versus taxation in India is a very important step.
I think this is not as easy as, people write in blogs or in article, and taking the help of a professional chartered accountant is a must when it comes to here, because it involves dealing in laws of separate different two countries also, which is very complicated matter.
Absolutely.
Also, one more thing that I wanted to ask you is, a lot of people have bank accounts, demat account in India as a NRI. So what happens is when they come back to India, it's also a challenge to now convert the NRI accounts into normal resident accounts. So what are some of the things people should keep in mind while doing this account status conversion process?
So first of all, when you, as per FEMA, when you qualify as a resident Indian, you need to immediately inform your banks. If you have demat accounts, if you have shares, mutual funds, you have to inform everybody that your residential status has changed. What happens with bank account is, since NRE account can be held, NRE, NRO accounts can only be held by NRIs. You cannot hold them once you are a resident. So you have to inform your bank, get them converted to a regular saving account or close the NRE account. So that is first thing. Secondly, you need to inform your demat accounts and all. You need to open a domestic demat account and convert all your NRE demat account or NRO demat account, whatever shares and securities you had, you have to convert it to your domestic demat account. Now, while doing that, it is important to note your purchase dates and the prices on which you had purchased your securities, because once you transfer it to another domestic account, then the purchase price is reflected as zero. So it's always better to download the entire statements first and then convert your holdings to a resident demat account.
Got it. Interesting. And generally, how difficult is this process? How cumbersome is this process? Since you might be dealing with some of your clients going through this process, is it very cumbersome? Is it not very cumbersome? Or is it moderately cumbersome? How would you define it?
It is a bit cumbersome. Actually, getting your accounts converted is a difficult process, because generally banks say that you have to go to your home branch to do any such sort of conversions. Now, if your home branch is not where you are living now, then it becomes difficult for you to visit that particular branch and convert it or close those accounts. Secondly, when you do this, first thing you will need as a resident Indian is an Aadhaar card. So first, when you come back to India, you need to apply for an Aadhaar card, get it, and only then you can, you have to link your Aadhaar card with your PAN card, and only then you can do this KYC process. So most of the NRIs who have been living outside India for a long time, they don't hold Aadhaar cards also. So getting Aadhaar card, then visiting those branches, converting your accounts or closing your accounts is a bit cumbersome process.
So I have a interesting thought. Since you might also be dealing with clients who wants to become an NRI, right? So there is someone who is working in an Indian company like me, and in future they shift to a foreign company. Now they become an NRI, right? So there's a different process for becoming an NRI, and there's a different process for an NRI now becoming a resident Indian. Which process is more easier? These are some things that people are just curious about.
Becoming an NRI is much easier, because you don't need to inform anybody. Like, you don't need to inform income tax department, FEMA, or anybody. You can straight away leave the country. The only thing is that once you become an NRI, you move out of India with the intention of staying outside India for employment or any indefinite period. You become a non-resident from day one. So if you are going outside India within a reasonable time, you have to convert your bank accounts to the NRE, NRO account. That is the only compliance that you need to do. Apart from that, whatever you are holding in India, for example, you had a PPF account, you can still retain that, or whatever other assets you had, you can still retain those. Even an NRI is not allowed to buy agricultural property. But if you are a resident Indian holding agricultural property and tomorrow you are becoming NRI, you can still retain that. So all those things are still available even after you become NRI. So it's much easier to become an NRI rather than coming back to India.
Interesting. I don't think many people talk about this thing, but it's kind of surprising to me. But Sagar, before I let you go, the last question that I wanted to ask you was, how can the government make it little bit simpler for NRIs who now wants to become a resident Indian? If you could give maybe 2 or 3 suggestions, then what would those be to make life little simpler?
Yeah, so first of all, any pension that you hold overseas now, that is the main thing which NRIs have. They have been earning through salaries and all, so they have a pension pot built there. But transferring that pension to India is a hassle. it is taxable. It is considered to be an unrecognized pension because it is held outside India. So the problem of double taxation lies on the pension amount that is outside India. That is the biggest hurdle. Only some countries do allow transferring of pension funds to India without with benefits of taxation. That is one of them is UK, which has a QROPS plan. So through that plan you can transfer the pension, but apart from that it's a very difficult process for the pension amount to be transferred. So first thing government needs to work out on is something related to pension, some sort of incentives, because once you have built a corpus outside India, it should be easier to take that to your home country and without a taxation hurdle. So that is the first thing which a lot of NRIs want to be done. Second is this RNOR status should be more simplified to give better relaxation so that people can plan their transition easily. So currently the rules are a bit tedious to follow. So if the provisions are made simpler or better relaxations can be given, then that would be easier for people to come back to India.
Got it. I think those are very useful things if it gets simplified or if it can be made slightly more easily accessible. And with that, Sagar, thank you so much for taking out the time and explaining to our listeners about the challenges of NRIs now wanting to become resident Indians. If someone wants to reach out to you, if they have a query or two regarding this process, how can they reach out to you?
You can reach out to me by email. My email ID is sagar.soman@gmail.com.
Cool. I think that would be very helpful for our listeners also. And yeah, once again, thank you so much for coming to the show and hope to see you again.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
That brings us to the end of today's episode. If you would like to know more about this topic, then you can reach out to me on Twitter. I go by the username @Sashind NJ or LinkedIn using my full name, that is Sashind Ningthoukhongjam. We would be happy to take your suggestions. That's all from our side. Thanks for tuning in. See you in the next episode.
To stay updated on this podcast, follow us at HT Smartcast on all the major social media platforms. To listen to more such podcasts, log on to www.htsmartcast.com.
क्या आपको पता है हनुमान जी ने अपनी एक कूद से पूरा समंदर पार कर दिया था, जो कि लगभग 100 योजन यानी कि 1200 किलोमीटर था। या फिर आपको ये पता था कि लक्ष्मण जी ने 14 साल तक बिना सोए राम जी और सीता जी की रक्षा की थी, और ये निद्रा उर्मिला जी को मिल गई थी, जो कि लक्ष्मण जी की पत्नी थी। हर एपिसोड में एक नई कहानी, एक नई दुनिया। फीवर स्टोरीज के साथ अपने दिनों को बनाइए खास। फीवर स्टोरीज, हर कहानी में एक नया जुनून। सब्सक्राइब नाउ ऑन YouTube और हर रोज पाइए एक नई कहानी का डोज। फीवर स्टोरीज, कहानियां जो सुनाई नहीं दिखाई देंगी।